Mr. Roger Corman. You know, you're one of those guys, it's like almost where do we begin? But I'm going to begin with, I saw the documentary on you at Sundance, and there are so many directors that have gone through the Roger Corman School of Filmmaking, and now you're on this next round of films with Sharktopus and the sci-fi films. Do you see, are you ushering in a whole nother wave of filmmakers that are going through your film school?
We have a couple of new young directors, particularly Declan O'Brien and Kevin O'Neill. Declan did Dino Shark for us, and no, wait a minute, the other way around. Kevin did Dino Shark for us, and Declan did Sharktopus. So, they've been sort of successful beyond what we anticipated. I thought Sharktopus was going too far with the title. I have a feeling that you can get up to a certain level of insanity with these titles, and everybody is with you. You go over the level of insanity, and people say, oh, cut it out, and they turn against you. And when we came up with Sharktopus, I thought, it's too much, we've gone too far. It turned out to be the highest rating the Sci-Fi channel has had in I don't know how many years. So we're now working on another equally incredible title, Piranaconda.
Do you look at it kind of thinking, well, I've come full circle after starting with like Attack of the Crab Monsters and films like that? Do you kind of look at it in a cyclical nature like that?
It is going back a little bit to the very first films I've made. It's partially in response to the fact that we don't get full theatrical distribution anymore for medium budget and low budget films. We're dependent upon DVD and cable, for instance, on Sharktopus, which played Sci-Fi a couple of months ago and is in its, I think its first month of DVD release. So we've got to go wilder, it appears, with these titles. They just get wilder and wilder. So we're going back to the original wildness that we started with.
You know, Texas, and Dallas in particular, has this great wave of independent filmmakers, and it's almost like this new wave of independent filmmakers. More than any other filmmaker, you balance pure entertainment value with making money on your films. Now, when you see things like VOD and streaming and talk about, like, you know, this new avenue through Sci-Fi, you know, how do you look at it now? Because you've gone through, you know, that generation where you would pretty much take and tour a movie, you know, and put a can of film in the backseat of the car and take it around, to now. How do you look at it from your perspective? Because you've done this.
Well, I welcome VOD, streaming, and various internet ways of distribution to come. When I first started, which was in the late 1950s, I've been around a long time, when I first started, every film we made got a full theatrical distribution. Over the years, the last few years, theatrical distribution has been primarily the major studios with an occasional Saw or Paranormal Activity, something like that, but just occasionally. So having been pushed out of theatrical, we're dependent, as I say, on cable, on DVD, and now VOD and streaming, and other uses of the internet, which I think are going to come, I welcome, because it's a whole new market, a whole new area in which people can see our films.
And just one more question, because I want to open this up to everybody, because I know we have limited time right now. One of the things that struck me as amazing when I watched that documentary is not the fact that you know, people like Jonathan Demme and Ron Howard and Paul Bartel and people like this would come out, Dick Miller would talk about their experiences with you, but they are clearly not indebted to you. And there's a scene in this movie where Jack Nicholson breaks down in tears because he so wants you to know how much they appreciate what you've done. How is it for you to watch that?
This was a documentary on me that was shown at Sundance, and I was surprised. Jack and I have always been good friends. We've known each other ever since we both started in the late 1950s. But he became very emotional and actually did start to cry as he talked about the relationship and the fact that we were friends and had worked together so long. I was moved by it myself.
Okay, let's get some questions here. Right there.
First off, this is an honor. This is an honor to have Roger Corman. It's basically a question about Tales of Terror. I'm just curious why there wasn't more anthology-type films like that done, and was Tales of Terror set out from the beginning to have Vincent play in all three stories plus narrated?
Tales of Terror was one of the later of the Edgar Allan Poe films. It was a trilogy of 3 short stories, and as you say, it was unusual. What I was trying to do was to vary the way in which I treated Poe. I started with The Fall of the House of Usher, went to The Pit and the Pendulum, The Premature Burial, a number of other Poe films, and both Dick Matheson, the writer, who wrote all of those, he wrote every one, I think, except Mask of the Red Death and Tomb of Lygia, the last 2 I made. Both he and I worried that we were repeating ourselves. So we said one way to change this, and particularly since Poe's stories were so short, is to make 3 short films, almost an anthology, and put them together. And what I remember best about Tales of Terror is the fact that we moved to humor on one of them. I think it was a Black Cat with Vincent and Peter Lorre playing a great wine tasting scene. I've always liked that scene.
Yes, right.
Yes, what was the genesis of you deciding, being low budget, part of a low budget effort, to tackle Poe, which would have, to somebody, you would have think, well, higher budgets. Where did that came from?
Actually, it was an attempt to move to higher budgets. I was making, I'd never made a film with more than a 10-day schedule. And AIP and Allied Artists, the two companies I was working with, had sort of an advertising style of putting 2 10-day black and white horror films or science fiction films or gangster films or whatever as a double bill and playing them as 2 pictures for the price of 1. And it had been quite successful, but AIP wanted me to make 2 more horror films, and I simply wanted to, frankly, to move to a higher level. So I said, instead of us making 2 10-day black and white films, let me have 3 weeks and color. And they said, what do you want to make? And I said, The Fall of the House of Usher. And they agreed, and it was a move up for me and for AIP. I had 3 weeks to shoot. I thought I was in the big time with that.
First off, you're basically my god. You're the reason I'm in film school right now, and I'm just so honored to be in your presence right now. But will you ever direct another film, ever? Because Frankenstein Unbound was just amazing.
I might direct again. The years have caught up with me. I would only direct again if I found something I really wanted specifically and personally to make. Otherwise, it's easier to let the director get up at 6:30 in the morning and go to work, and I drift by around 9 and 9:30 and say, what did you shoot that shot for? It's an easier life.
Right in the back. Yep, you.
Death Race 2000 and Piranha are 2 of my favorite films, not just genre films, but favorite in general. Do you have any particular anecdotes about either or both that stand out?
Well, on Death Race 2000, we had some stunt drivers doing the driving. for David Carradine and our new discovery, Sylvester Stallone, playing opposite David. And there was one stunt that they considered to be very dangerous. And stuntmen would get what is called a bump. They get their normal salary for the normal stunts they do, and on a dangerous stunt, they get a bonus, which they call a bump. And if it's really dangerous, it's a double bump. And on one of the race sequences, the driver said, this was really dangerous. He needed a double bump. I said, give me the helmet, I'll drive the car myself.
Yes, hi. Mr. Corman, I was curious as to what happened with the film Fantastic Four.
That's a long story, and to me, a very interesting and strange story, but I'll try and make it as fast as I can. Bert Eichinger, a friend of mine, a good German producer, owned the rights to the Fantastic Four. And he came to me in September, and he said he had a budget of $30 million to make the Fantastic Four, but he hadn't raised the $30 million. And if he didn't start shooting by December 31st, the end of the year, he would lose his option. He said, I've got $1 million. Can you make this film for $1 million? So I met with the guys at the studio. We said, well, we have to make a couple of adjustments here on some of the things in, and we can make it for $1 million. And he said, when do you want to shoot? And I said, I want to shoot December 30th. And he said, no, that'll be too obvious that I'm trying to beat my time limit. Let's shoot on December 26th. And I said, Bert, it's going to be obvious anyway. So we started shooting on December 28th. And it actually was a pretty good little film. I liked the film. And his deal with me was, he made a very interesting deal. Because this was at a time when, as I say, the theatrical distribution of these films was starting to tend down. And he said he would put up $1 million, not only for the picture, but another $1 million for prints and advertising. And I thought, well, this will be a very good experiment to see if we can move to a higher level. But he said, I also want one other thing. I want the right to buy the picture back for 90 days after you finish the film, in case I can sell it to a major studio. And he offered me a rather high bonus to buy it back. So I knew if he bought it back, I would make a great deal of money. But I really wanted to distribute the film. He sold the film on something like the 88th or 89th day to Fox. They made a $60 million film, and they just put the $1 million film into the budget of the 60. And I asked Bernd what he was going to do with it. And he said, I'll make more money off the $1 million film than the other one, because after the $60 million film comes out, I'll release the $1 million film as the prequel, and I'll score. But Fox wouldn't let him do it, so he never had the chance.
You're producing the films now. What is your role in that? Like, as far as like producing, do you go to the set every day?
What exactly are you doing?
Yeah, what I mean, how involved are you?
Okay, I work a little differently from most producers, having been a director for the major part of my working career. I work primarily in pre-production. Almost every film we make is an original idea of mine. I work with I write a 2 or 3 or 4 page outline. I then work with the writer on the development of the script, bringing in the director somewhere along the line so that he gets an input into the script also. I then work on pre-production, on casting, talk with the director about the way the film will be shot and so forth, what his themes, what the interpretation will be, what the schedule will be. And once the film starts, I feel on the first day of shooting, in the morning of, let's say, Monday morning, when the director can say, cut, print, on the first shot, that film is halfway done. Because everything has been in pre-production. I'm there on the morning of the first day of shooting, and I'm generally gone by lunchtime, and I very seldom come back to the set. I look at the dailies. Having been a director myself, I think during the directing of the picture, during the production, I leave it to the director and the production manager. The production manager's job is to see that it comes in on schedule, and the director's job is to make a good film. I will occasionally talk to them on the phone. I look at the dailies every day. I seldom go to the set because I find when I go to the set, people start asking, the crew start asking me questions that they should be asking the director. So I leave it to the director with an occasional phone call and so forth. I don't come back in until the editing, and I leave the first 2 cuts totally to the director and the editor. Then I'll make comments and notes on the subsequent cuts.
Thanks.
Yes.
Oh yes. Well, a lot has been made of the directors and some of the filmmakers that have come out of your system, but I think that you yourself are one of the most interesting filmmakers of your era. Maybe you and Cassavetes from that time. So I really think that tap the brakes a little bit and give you your due as a director. But Joe Dante was shopping around The Man with the Kaleidoscope Eyes, which was about you on the production of the Trip. What were your thoughts on that? And don't you think the production also of The Intruder would make a hell of a film?
Actually, the production of The Intruder would be a wilder film. It was a film about the racial integration of the South, which I shot with a new young actor, Bill Shatner, in the South. And we were run out of 3 towns. We had death threats. The sheriff kicked us out of 1 entire county. That would be a pretty interesting one. The Man with the Kaleidoscope Eyes is a good script. He had Colin Firth committed to play me, but after the King's speech, I feel that he's going to have to find somebody else.
Like someone already said, you're the reason I want to become a filmmaker. And do you have any advice for filmmakers, like budding filmmakers?
Yes. I think you are in a fortunate position, a more fortunate position than I was, because with the digital cameras and the new lighter, more portable equipment, you can make a film yourself. You get together a few people and you can make a film for very, very little money. That's one way to go. Another way to go, which I really recommend, is simply to go to film school and learn. If you can't go to film school, get a job somewhere on an independent production. It's easier now for a young person to get a job on an independent picture than it was for me, because the entire business was highly unionized at that time, and it was difficult to break in. There's so many independent films being made now, it's a lot easier to break in. And what you're doing when you get that job, first, you're doing the best job you can, but second, you're looking around, seeing what other people are doing, and you're learning on the job.
Yeah.
It was great working with Vincent, Peter, and Boris, because I was working with three of the greats. I worked with Vincent many times, of course. I'd never worked with Peter or Boris. There was a little bit of problem the first day or two, because Boris was a classically trained actor, and he said to me, actually, on the second or third day, he said, "Roger, I learn my lines, I come in, I'm prepared to give the performance exactly as written." Peter comes in improvising as he goes and has a vague idea of the script, and he says, "I don't know how to act with that." Now, Vincent could work both ways, so I called everybody together and had coffee and explained the situation. and said to Peter, what you're doing is great, which I thought was great. His improvisations were really good. But I said, you've got to stay, Peter, a little closer to the script. And Boris, I didn't say loosen up, but I said, Boris, you've got to be a little freer and understand what Peter is doing. Vincent was cool. He could play both ways. By the third day, everything was going very well. And they all got along very well together.
Oh, you talk. Yes. Filming in Texas.
I wasn't on the Texas location. As I've said before, when I'm producing, I don't spend much time on the script. Plus, I had another picture, I'd forgotten what it was, shooting in Los Angeles. So I was on the set a little bit in Los Angeles, but Joe Dante and John Davison ran the entire operation in Texas and did very well. I mean, I think it's a very good film, and it started both of their careers.
We have time for 2 more questions. You go first.
You said nowadays it's much easier to make an independent film and much easier to get on a production, but it seems like movie theaters, even movie stores, and just as a whole, people are more ignoring independent films to a greater extent, except through new media. So would you say, why would you say is the cause for that?
It's 2 points. I say making the film is easier than when I started, but getting distribution is tougher than when I started. Because of the fact, as I said, when I started, every film, the first picture I ever made, we shot in a week for $30,000, actually $12,000 cash, and the rest on credit. And that got a full theatrical release. Today, a low-budget independent or even a medium-budget independent will not get a theatrical release at all. So it's much more difficult. You're dependent upon probably first DVD, then if it's a genre film, there are various cable channels you can go to. Sci-Fi, I've been working with for a number of years specifically, is very good at that. They commission a number of films, and they pick up independent films that are being made. And previously we were talking about VOD and streaming. I think these are the way the independent films will be released. Occasionally somebody will get a theatrical release, but that's rare.
Yeah, all right.
Which films have been the most fun for you to work on in your career?
Little Shop of Horrors was probably the most fun. Weirdly enough, just last night at Grauman's Chinese, Turner Classic Movies has a week of classic films, and I found myself introducing the Little Shop of Horrors and saying, I never believed Little Shop of Horrors would be in a classic film festival.
All right.
Everyone, thank Roger Corman. Again, it's an amazing opportunity to have him here. Go and stop by his table, and thank you so much.